Okay. Kumlen Black Gemara, Shushan Purim, and we are in the Sechti Yevamos Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. We are middle of the page. The last thing we were learning about was a machlekes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. When, let's say, there were five brothers who all of them had the mitzvah of Yibum. Reuben passed away, and he had childless. He had five brothers, and Shimon marries Reuben's wife. Is he acting on everyone's behalf, or is he doing his own thing? And the nafkamina is, and the same thing if Shimon gives chalitza. Is he acting on everyone's behalf? And the nafkamina is, as far as the other brothers concerned, once one woman in that house, only bayis echad, only one woman in that house has the mitzvah yibum, and then it's over. The rest of the brothers now, as far as Shimon is concerned, there's no longer any more Isser Karas of your brother's wife because he had a mitzvah yibum. So even regarding the tzara, there's no longer an Isser of your brother's wife because he removed it. How does that affect all the other brothers? By them, since they're not involved, which is Lakish's opinion, they still have the Isser of Karas if they have anything to do with the tzara, or if Shimon divorces this woman and they want to marry her. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, this brother is acting on behalf of everybody. So as far as everybody's concerned, there's no longer the Isser of Chiyav Karas. There's only the mitzvah say of bayis echad, or the loises of not taking both wives. No one should marry the tzara, but there's no longer karas. So that's the last thing we learned, and we'll continue a little bit on this theme. Continuing right here. Ikma we learned right in the middle of the page. Ikma we learned habo al Yevamos. Let's say Shimon goes ahead and marries Reuben's wife Leah. Ubo echad min ha'achin al tzarasa, and then one of the brothers came and had relations with the tzara, with the brachul, who was the other wife of Reuben. Now we know that the bayis echad rachmana, the mitzvah say that you can only marry one person in the household, and so therefore there's a law habon miklal asay. You're not allowed to. But is there an Isser Karas involved here because you have no heter of Yibum anymore? And how does it affect all the other brothers? They still all have Karas. In other words, they hold, as we normally say, all they have is a mitzvah say, which is bayis echad amar rachmana. Bayis amar rachmana. Teisha's girsa is b'chad amar beloy saseh. And he holds a bayis echad amar rachmana is not coming to teach you that, once the Isser of Karas is gone, you still shouldn't live with any of them because it's an asay. It's rather, he said, that you need to tell you there are two women that you would have thought they both of them can marry the brothers. Two women can marry two different brothers. So you tell you bayis echad, there's only one woman of one of the wives of Reuben that gets married, the rest are not allowed to marry the brothers. Has nothing to do with that. He says, asher lo yivne bayis, it's a lab, asher lo yivne bayis, a woman you didn't build a house with, because you built the house with the other one, and therefore there's a lab for any of the other brothers. So you didn't do anything here, so therefore the other brothers have an Isser lab, but definitely no curse. Now, what's the basis of that argument? Mandam who says that the Shimon, whatever he did not have the other brothers in mind. So as far as the other brothers are concerned, there's still the same Isser of Karas. And since one woman in this house already had fulfilled the mitzvah of Yibum, there's no other mitzvah of Yibum left. So what do you have left now? It's your brother's wife. So even the tzara, you're not allowed to get Karas. I was like Reish Lakish. But the man don't say, the one who says, according to Rashi's mitzvah say, according to Tesis, there's a license that holds like Rabbi Yochanan that whatever Shimon did, he acted as a shliach on behalf of a proxy, on behalf of all the other brothers. So the Karas is gone. And now they have the Isser either of Hasei, Bayis, Echad, Amar Rachmana, or the license like Tesis, Asher Lo Yivne Bayis. Till now, we were learning that if one of the women, what do you call it, has an Isser of Karas, Reuben is married to two women, and one of them happens to be Shimon's daughter, so obviously Shimon cannot marry her, so therefore the tzara is also exempt, as we learned from the pasuk there, Aleha and Litzroi. So that comes along Rav, and he expands that rule, and he says, even tzara saita, so a woman who committed adultery, if a woman, let's say, committed adultery, and we're talking about a case here where there were witnesses that actually saw commit adultery. So really, she shouldn't be living with Reuben anymore, but she continued living. And now Reuben dies. Shimon, therefore, there's no mitzvah of Yibum here with this woman because she was living in sin with Reuben. Because if there were witnesses and anything else, she had no right to continue living with her husband. So therefore, the Yavam has no mitzvah of Yibum. But he goes further. He says, so too the tzara is exempt as well. Even though the only place that we know a tzara is exempt is from Isser Arayas, things that have Karas, he expands it to include a woman who's a Saita. There's no whatever Isser Arayas, Isser Karas there, but it's not part of the Arayas. Still, it extends to the Saita, to the Tzara as well. And not only she cannot marry Shimon, the Tzara is exempt and she's a free woman. Why? Because the pasuk says tuma ksiva. In the pasuk when it describes the site, it says vihi nitma, and tuma is the same word that we use by arayos, ke'arayos, just like by arayos. So therefore, the din is the same. That's Rab's chiddush. That the tzara of a site is just like by tzara by arayos, that they're exempt from the whole mitzvah of Yibum. Comes along, Moshe Rav Chizli has a question. It says a very sad story, but we'll learn about it later in Yevamos. Let's say Leah was married to Reuben, and Reuben went to war, or Reuben went away, went overseas, and she didn't hear from her husband for a while. She was like a living aguna, and then a witness came along and said, I saw your husband dead. A single witness, not two, single witness. So the Bezin says, usually we need two witnesses, but Rachmanis and Aguna, we're going to allow her to get married. So she marries Shimon legally, based on the halach with Bezin, and 6 months later, Reuben returns. The din is that she's no longer allowed to live with Shimon. Obviously, she's a married woman to Reuben. She can't live with Shimon anymore. And even if Reuben gives her a get, she cannot continue living with Shimon because she lived in sin. Nor can she go back to Reuben because it's like she committed adultery, goes back to Reuben. Now, why don't we let her go back to Reuben? It's totally not her fault. So the Gemara logic will be because we're making it easy on her, but on the other hand, she didn't do enough homework. She should have made it easy because she's not good, but she shouldn't just have relied on that. She should have done a little bit more homework to make sure that this single witness's testimony is correct. So therefore, with the Rabbanon, she cannot go back to Reuben. Taita, she definitely could. It's not her fault. It's like someone was raped. It's not if we'll go back to her husband, but the Rabbanon don't let her go back. Okay, so what happens here if Reuben, her original husband, Reuben, so she can't live with anyone. Reuben dies. So Taita, there's a mitzvah of Yibum, because she's still married to Reuven. So she's still mitzvah Yibum. And the Rabbanon, she was married to Shimon because she followed the Bezdin, so therefore she needs to do it. But she cannot marry any of the brothers of Shimon because she's not even stay married to Shimon. So as far as Shimon is concerned, all she needs is chalitza from other brothers. As far as Reuven is concerned, technically she should be able to miyabim the brothers because Ma'atayra, she's still married. But the Rabbanon don't want her to, said she cannot live with Reuven, so therefore neither does she do Yibum, she does chalitza. What about the tzara? So Reuben married to two women. So one of them was this wife, who went and got married to Shimon, but the other one didn't get remarried. So what happens to her? Since Mahatayla is a mitzvah of Yibum, does the other one have to be miyabim? Or can she be miyabim to one of the brothers? Or there's this law that you can only have chalitza applied to the tzara as well? So Rab Shimon says, Bi asa or chalitzasa me'echav shel rishon paiteret tzarasa. He says that that she can actually even have Yibum as well if she wants. But since Ma'atayla, she's married to Reuven, she can have Yibum to the other brothers. The Rabbanans disagree. They say she can only have Chalitza. But it seems they all agree when it comes to the Tzara, she can have a Bio Chalitza. So it's a question. And this woman is like a Saita because she was a married woman, and it's like she committed adultery. True, it's not a fault, but it's like she committed adultery. So what's Rabbi Yehuda Merab's coming along and saying? That the Tzara of a Saita, there's also no mitzvah of Yibum, which is totally exempt. Here we see that the Tzara of a Saita has the full mitzvah of Yibum. That's the question. Rav said, what are you comparing that case to my case? That's an unfortunate situation. I'm talking about a woman who committed adultery, there were Adim, everything else, and therefore the Torah labels as a Tmeya, so therefore there's no mitzvah Yibum, not for her, not for the Tzara. You tell me a case over here, which is only a Saita technically midrabanan. She definitely didn't do anything wrong. She followed the Bezdin, but it's only midrabanan that we treat her like a Saita that she cannot go back to her first husband. So, how are you comparing the two? So of course the tzara is still full-fledged Yibum. We're not going to punish the tzara. What did she do wrong? So therefore she has to be miyabim. What are you comparing? Depending on such an obvious difference, the karla and my karla. What was the question in the first place? Says we thought there's a rule that we normally say, called the tikkun rabbanon ke'ein deraisa tikkun. When the rabbis come in and intervene and they try to initiate some new laws, they always try to replicate or base themselves on a mitzvah Torah. So therefore, we thought that even though it's only a Saita Rabbanon, but because you labeled her a Saita, therefore it should follow the laws of Saita Mahatayra. And if you hold that a Saita Mahatayra, the Tzara is no longer is part of the mitzvah Yibum, so this case as well. And the Gemara says no, that we're not going to go that far because the whole thing is based on sort of a knas, a penalty. She didn't have homework. Why in the world would it sort of be roped into that? Is Moshe Rabashi? Rabashi has a question. It says, let's say we learn more Saita. This woman was it was warned by her husband. I know that you're having some kind of shenanigans with this other guy. I don't want you to have any stira. I don't want you to have any seclusion with this guy. But let's say she defied her husband and she spent some private time. with this person somewhere discreet. And they're long enough that something could have happened. We'll see in the site in the beginning there how long that is. The din is, and we said 3 times in the Torah Nitma, we learn out that Echad Lebal, she's forbidden to live with her husband. The Echad Leboil, nor if she definitely was a Saita, she's also the husband, she's also if the husband divorced her, she cannot marry the person that she committed adultery with. And Vasur Lechal Truma. The Asur Lebase of the husband, Truma. If she's married to a Kohen, she can no longer eat Truma as well. The mace, and if the husband, let's say, the one who warned her, dies, let's say, we're talking about a Saita here, right? We're talking about a normal case of a Saita. And because since he warned and everything else, it's sort of, it's not just a suffix, it's a strong suffix. There's strong legs or a strong reason to be suspicious after, that she was caught a number of times in seclusion with this guy, and then she's warned and she defied him. There's strong grounds to say that something might have happened. Now, if, let's say, her husband, the original husband, dies, then the din is that we don't want, since she's also to live with the husband, we're not going to allow her, the brothers step in to take the place of the husband. How can they be better than him? So they can't live with her either, but they have to give her chalitza. So we see clearly from here that by a saita, you still give chalitza. It's not like Rav said before, there's no mitzvah yimerol or being or chalitza, nothing. Here we see the saita itself, there's still a chalitza. So the tzar of the saita at least should have the mitzvah of chalitza. Says the Gemara, I'm telling you, I'm talking to you about a case with the woman witnesses that she committed adultery, and I'm telling you that, of course, everyone agrees that there's no yibum for her. That extends to the tzara. And you're telling me a case here, which is a normal case of a saita. We don't know anything happened. You have to bring the base of mikdash. You have to give it the water to determine what the story is. But marginally, you're telling me a story about saita safek. You tell me a story about saita of a safek. So you want to ask back. I don't understand. What's the name of the about it? Your whole basis was because we referred to her as Tamei, and therefore you said Tamei is the same description we describe all those who debauchery, arayas. So therefore, immorality. So the same thing by Saita Safek. Well, I'm telling you, the Torah also refers to the Saita Safek as a Tamei, and therefore, according to your logic, the rule should be the same. What's the story? So I'm going to ask. It says Tumah. It says in fact Tumah by Saita Safek as well. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, a very interesting argument. We learned in the Braisa. It says in the Torah in Parsha Kiseitze that a man divorces his wife. If she's free now, she can marry him if she wants, and he can always take her back, unless he's a kohen. But if she marries somebody else, and then that person either dies or divorces her, she can no longer go back to the original husband. And the Torah uses the word, he can no longer go back, achrei asher hu tama. Since she became tamei, he can no longer go back. Kita evi, he's an abomination before Hashem. Okay, that's what the pasuk says. Now, what are we talking about in this case? Now, very interesting machlekes Rabbi Yosi and the Chachamim. Rabbi Yosi will say that this pasuk is referring to the entire pasuk is talking about a woman who married somebody else and wants to go back to the original husband. Now the question is, when she married somebody else, did they actually have to live together, or what? They only got engaged. Mahater, they got engaged. Can she? And then whatever didn't work out, could she go back to the original husband? Or could they say, yeah? Because the pasuk says, since Hutama became Tamei, when did he become Tamei? When they had relations, and since there were no marital relations, so she didn't become Tamei. So the entire pasuk is talking about this woman. The Chachamim say no. It definitely makes no difference whether she got engaged to another person or whether she, Mahatorah biblically, or whether she got married to another person. Why? Because the Torah says that it says Li Yisrael Isha, and we know that the word Havoya, it says in the pasuk V'hoisa Leish Acha. Right? She left her husband, and V'hoisa Leish Acha, she married another person, and the husband can't go back. V'hoisa means she got engaged. So we're talking about even if she got engaged with no marital relations, you cannot go back to the original husband. So what's the pasuk saying? Achnu Tama. So the Chacham say, you know what? It's not talking at all about this married woman who got married to somebody else. We're now talking about a saita. This part of the pasuk has nothing to do. We're going to take the part of the pasuk and take it out of whatever, remove it from the subject and move it to a saita. And what? That a saita is called, every saita is called tamei. As we see clearly, the word tamei extends even to a saita where there's no witnesses. So according to you, Rebbe, every saita there should be no mitzvah yimerol, not even chalitza. So the Gemara says, this is the proof. The Gemara saying that a ordinary site is also called tamei. The time we learned is somebody take back his divorced wife after she got married to somebody else. Asura, it is forbidden. But if Mina Asen, all she did was she got engaged to somebody else, well, Ted is the original husband could take her back. Just remember, it says it's only forbidden to him because she became Tama. She didn't. They didn't have any relations. The Chachamim so it makes no difference whether she had relations or not. She got engaged, can no longer go back to the original husband. So why is the pasuk she became tummy? The rabbis say this part of the pasuk we're going to remove we'll take it to something else. And we're going to talk about Saita now. So we see clearly from here that a Saita. So the Gemara is talking about a Saita, not a Saita that was caught, with witnesses. Shinista, all she did was she was alone in seclusion, in private, with that person that she was told not to. So we see from here clearly that even a regular Saita is called tummy. So Gemara answers back, no, we're not talking about the Gemara. What the Gemara says over here, tummy, we're talking about Saita. We're talking about a Saita who actually had relations. Umay nista. And what does it mean? So why we use the word nistra if you mean relations? It means nivelis, actually had real relations. Michael says, so why in the world do Chachamim use the word nistra when they mean relations? Says the Gemara, nistra lishtam aliyanakat. We're talking the Chachamim wanted to use a discrete, an elegant term. So they use the word nistra when it actually means relations. That's what we're talking about. That we know for sure that she had relations, then she became tummy. But a regular Saita is not called tummy, because we don't know if anything happened. So therefore, it's not a question on Rav. Rav is saying when it's an ordinary Saita, you need chalitza, because we don't know if anything happened. Either Chacham over here, they're talking about a Saita that we know for sure that had Bila. Says about a Nivela, if we're talking about a Saita that had Bila, Tumah Behedik it says already in the Torah clearly, in the laws of Saita, they already called it Tumah. V'nistra v'hi nitma. And there talks about that she became Tumah through Bila. So what do you need this posse for? To tell you that the woman in Saita, we know that she lived with somebody else. Comes this pasuk to tell you that if she's not allowed to remain with her husband, this Saita, she became Tama, she had relations. The husband, even if he's Meichel her, he says, no, I'm Meichel you, doesn't help. He's no longer allowed to live with her. She voluntarily, in witnesses, had relations. She made adultery. That's what you need a pasuk for. No, Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur, you know what? Lav, besides the Lester, he holds it no lav. A husband shouldn't be living with his wife anymore because the Torah says that she has to leave. It's a mitzvah say, but there's no lav involved because this pasuk Achrei Tumi says you can't and so on and so forth. Is talking about a person who's taken back as a wife after she got married to somebody else. Nothing to do with say. The Chacham say no, it's coming to teach you a lav. Va'afilas anoi, even for sure she committed adultery according to Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur, there's no lav. Says my time, how do they know? Because havoya the ishas ksiv bei. Because it says when it says that she's asa to husband, it says that it says we can see it. It says that she actually married, and v'hoisa is a form of kedushin. That's what v'hoisa is, and that's when you can go back to the first one. So according to Rabbi Yossi, only if she married somebody else can she go back to the husband. But if let's say while she's married to her husband, she committed adultery, there's no lav. That's not what the pasuk is talking about at all. Because the pasuk is talking about she married somebody else. Because he learns the entire pasuk is talking about that situation. Okay, so about further point, that's a question. So the Torah says clearly you're not allowed to take back your wife after Mishani says after she got married to somebody else. And if you do, you're over lav. Okay, the question is, if he dies, what happens? We make it die. Is she allowed? Now, remember, it says in the pasuk Tamei. If the pasuk is talking about that he took back his wife or married somebody else, she's Tamei. So therefore, obviously, there's no mitzvah yibum. What about her tzara in this case? It's not l'rayos. This is just take back your original wife. The tzara, does she have a mitzvah yibum or not? Umes tzara. What's the name of the tzara? Now let's go work our way through between Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur and the Chum. Eliba, there's different versions of the Gemara's question. Version number one. Eliba, the Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur, according to Yosef ben Kippur, the entire pasuk is talking about he took his wife back, and the Torah labels her as Tamei, like Tibai, no question. Why? Kivan the Amar Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur, Tumah b'machzik l'shasei diksiva. He says the word tumah is referring to a person that takes his wife back. So obviously, if she's tumah, she's just like an erba. She has no mitzvah yibum or chilz or anything else, and neither does a tzara, because by erba we learned out from a pasuk that there's no tzara. So they say tzarasa kamaisa, no question. The pasuk says the image of the sea to Eva he. The pasuk says this is an abomination. It says the word he, this, she, as if to say it's limited only to her. Doesn't it sound like excluding who? Excluding the tzara, that we won't cast aspersions on her. He to Eva ridashana. For her is an abomination. The ain bonel to Eva, that her children are not affected by it, and her children are allowed to marry a kohen. If she has children with her real husband, with her current husband, even though they commit adultery, it has no impact on the children. So that's what he to Eva is. So according to the keeper, there's no question that she's considered tamei, and therefore the tzara also has no mitzvah yibum. Ki to boilach. Our question is according to the Rabban. The Rabban hold that this second half of the pasuk of tamei is talking about a satan. Not talking about a guy who took back his married wives. What happens then? So the what's the question then? Again, she's not called tamei. The question is as follows: when we take a pasuk and say, look, the pasuk we don't really need the pasuk for this situation. We're going to use it for something else. How do we understand it? Do we completely remove the pasuk, or do we still say at the end of the day, the pasuk still, you have to leave the pasuk a little bit in its original form, and then we'll use it for something else. If you say that, which is called ein mikra yotze b'dei pshutei, that a pasuk doesn't leave completely its normal shot, then we need the pasuk also is referring to this woman who was married to somebody else and came back as a tameya. Even though we're also using it for a saita, we're also using it for a saita. Not only using it exclusively for a saita. So that's our question. This second half of the pasuk is talking about a saita. Do we say ein mikra yotze? It's also talking about a saita, but we still leave it in the original form. Or do we say keeping the okay? Once you remove the part of the pasuk, it has totally unrelated to the original place. That's the question. According to Chachamim, is she tamei? No yibum at all, even for the tzara. Not tamei. No. That's one version. Ikidami, others say different. According to the Rabbanan, there's no question. Kivan this akir. No question. Once you took the pasuk away from the original pasuk, it's talking about saita, nothing to do with the married woman coming back to the original husband. So therefore, there's a chalitza for her, or there's yibum for the tzara. Our question is Eliba de Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur. According to Rabbi Yosef ben Kippur, who calls her tamei, how do we understand the words to'evahi, that she is an abomination? Is it coming to exclude the children and that there's no impact on them, or is it coming to exclude the tzara, that there's no impact on her and she still has a mitzvah yibum? That's the question. That she is tamei, this woman it's talking about someone take back his wife. Miyat rachmana, but the Torah clearly says to'evahi, that she is a to'eva. The ain't tzara to'eva. Do we dash and she's the abomination, but not her tzara? Ideally, he to'eva, the ain't but now to'eva, but children are to'eva. Hatzara to'eva, but a tzara is a to'eva. Amalei. Okay, so that's the most question. Which one is it? Amalei. He said to him. Okay, so we can try to resolve. He said to him, Tinisua, we learned, we learned if one of them was kosher and one that is puzzle. Let's say there were two wives. Reuben died, left behind two wives. One of them is a kosher, those words, and one of them is puzzle. Now, we're not sure what kosher and puzzle means. Does kosher and puzzle mean to Shimon, to the surviving brother, that one woman he's allowed to marry and one woman is puzzled? Is that what it means? Or kosher and puzzle means to the world, but not necessarily to Shimon, as we'll see. Yeah. So now you have a choice. You can either yibum chalitza, and with one of them, and that's it. So the question is as follows: one is kosher and puzzle. So if you're going to do chalitza psula, prefer that you do the chalitza with a woman's puzzle anyway, because a chalitza is a form of a get. Midrabanan at least, and a kohen, for example, cannot marry a woman who went through a chalitza service because she's treated like a divorce. Midrabanan. The im hoya miyavim, but if you decide that you want to marry, then prefer the miyam l'ksheda, the one that's kosher to you. Now the more wants to understand. My ksheda, my psal, what do you mean kosher? What do you mean possible? Elaine l'ksheda means ksheda la'alma, that was, for example, that she can marry anybody, including a kohen. That she has, yichis, and what does psula mean? Psula means psula la'alma, for example, she's a divorcee. So she's allowed to marry a Yisrael, but she's not allowed to marry a kohen, or a chalutza, but you cannot marry a kohen. That's called psula. So the question like this Shimon, the brother, is Yisrael. So to him, as far as he's concerned, he can marry either one. So what's going on? What's the difference? Whichever one wants to give chalitza to, or whichever one wants to marry, what's the difference? What's chalitza kasha? Who cares about a kohen? What's the difference? He can marry either one or give chalitza to either one. So what do you give me these recommendations? Who he should marry? Who should give chalitza to? I must be talking about why are you advising him to marry only someone who's kosher? He only can marry someone who's entitled to marry a kohen. Doesn't make sense. So obviously, what kosher pasal means, as far as he's concerned, elalav sheda means sheda a girl that he's allowed to marry, and the other woman is psula pasal pasal him. For example, what would be an example that's pasal to him, but kosher to the whole world? Pasal to him and kosher to the whole world. It could very well be, let's say Reuben took back, let's say this is Rachel and Leah. Leah was his wife, one of the two wives of Reuben, and then he divorced her and she married somebody else. And then she came back. Now Reuben had no right to live with Leah, so therefore that woman is pasal to Shimon, because you're stepping into Reuben's shoes, and if Reuben couldn't live with her, how can you live with her? What are we talking about? That he took her back, that Reuben took her back. And he also has another tzara, and now Reuben died. So now this woman, Leah, the one who was taken back, is forbidden to be married by Shimon, because Shimon is standing in the place of Reuben. But the other one, the other woman, the remaining wife, is considered kshera. So we see clearly from here the tzara of a woman that you took back is permitted to get married. That was the original question. Uktanan, you asked. And that's what it says, that if you marry the one that you're allowed to, not the one you're not allowed to. Now it makes sense. But what he clearly made the question, he's a clear proof that the tzara of this woman has the mitzvah of Yibum. No, but you cannot marry Leah, but you can marry Rachel. Then no proof, because I can learn. They were talking about a case that, let's say, a divorcee and she cannot marry a kohen, so she's kosher to you, but she's possible to a kohen. And ksheil means kosher to the whole world. She can even marry a kohen. So what are these suggestions? With the comment, and he said, when it says by Yibum, marry the ksheil, doesn't mean you have to marry the ksheil. You can marry either one. You can marry either the ksheil or the psula. But the main chiddush is the chalitza. You're going to give chalitza. You know what? Give chalitza to the woman who's already divorced, because you're not hurting her. She's divorced anyway. You can't marry kohen. Might as well give. Why take the other woman, Rachel, who was never divorced and she could marry anybody? Why ruin her and give her a chalitza? And that's what he's saying here. Since he can marry either one, because he can marry either one. So my nafkal what's he's giving chalitza? What's the difference? He's giving, if it's Leah, the one Reuben took back, he shouldn't have married. He gives the chalitza, or he gives the other one chalitza. I'll tell you that for a minute. So Rabbi Yosef, the famous thing, Rabbi Yosef said, Kan Shan Rebbe. Rebbe teaches us over here in this Mishnah that Rebbe says, L'yishpech Adam may boider. A person shouldn't pour out the water from his cistern, even though he doesn't need it, a junk. But if others need it, don't throw something out. If somebody else can use it, give it to somebody else. Same thing over here. Why ruin the chalutz, the woman that's kosher from marrying a kohen? Why deprive her or deny her that? Give it to the one who's chalutza anyway. Even though you're chalitza, no, but you're not marrying either of them, so you care what happens to them. You have nothing to do with them anymore. Still, if you don't throw out your water, if you can help somebody out, help her out. Yeah. Says the Gemara, and others need it. Toshma coming here. It says if somebody says in the Braisa, if somebody takes back his gerusha, Reuben's wife divorced and then she married somebody else, came back. Mishnah Isas, once Reuben marries her, and then Reuben dies, she and the tzara both get chalitza. So before we go any further, since we only know Bayis Echad Rachman, only one of the women have to go through the Yibum process, not both. They both have to go through the process. Let's fix up the Bryce and say either her or the tzara gets chalitza. So it says clearly from here that the tzara can only get chalitza. Sounds like she cannot marry. So that resolves the question. He asked if the tzara of somebody taking back, if she can get married, Yibum is clearly only chalitza. Says the Gemara. The moment you started tampering with the Bryce and you put a few more words in, I can add a few more words. The lav terutzi, you already came in and you edited the brisa. So let's edit it further. Tritachi, the woman that went through that Aveira and went back to her original husband, she could only do chalit something else. But Sarasa, the Tsar is one who could do either one. Once you're tampering with the brisa, it's no longer conclusive. Rabbi Yechanan said, Rabbi Yechanan asked a similar question, and we're going to go through the same question again. There's the Gemara. In the name of Rabbi Yechanan, we asked a very similar question, and it goes as follows. If somebody takes his gerusha, mission nisas, if somebody takes back Reuben, takes back his wife after she married somebody else, so Rasa Mao. Same question before. What would the deed be by the tzara? Before we had Rabbi Yehuda asking Rav Sheshes, and here we have Chia Barababa saying the name Rabbi Yechanan. So what's the name of the tzara? What's the status of the tzara? First Rabbi said, why are you asking about the tzara? What about the woman herself? Okay, he did a lot. But it's still a mitzvah of Yibam with other brothers or not? Ask about herself. So he said, to ask about her whether she can marry the other brothers, I have no question. If the brothers are taking the place of Reuben, if Reuben himself was not allowed to live with her, how can the other brothers have the mitzvah of Yibam to live with her? The mutala, or her original husband, that she was always permitted with, and then suddenly she did something that banned her from living with him. Asura is ba'asala, the brothers that were always forbidden to her while she was married to Reuven, like Koshkein, or even after she's married to, even after she's divorced from Reuven, the brother's not allowed to marry her because the brother's original wife. So like Koshkein, surely how can they step into his shoes and be allowed to marry him when he couldn't live with her? So I have no question about her. All she does is chalitza. My question is kikabay letzarasa. My question is regarding the tzara. What happens to her? How far do we take this kalvachayma? Mi alam kalvachayma lemitzvah tzara is a kalvachayma that strong. That what? This kalvachayma said that mutal of asla is that strong that not only it prevents her from marrying, it prevents also the tzara. Or not? That's the question. Ramnachim Mitzvah had another version of this question. Has a question. What's the deal if he takes back his wife? Rabami said, not that he said, why don't you ask about her? He said, and not only that, Rabbi Yechanan's question was about her, the one who went through the Isser. What happens with her after she married Reuben in sin? Went back to her husband in sin. Rabami, why are you asking about her? What about the tzari? So Rabbi Yechannan in this version said, tzarasa like a baili. For sure, that Sarah has the full mitzvah of Yibam. If she wants to marry one of the brothers, she can, because she did nothing wrong, and she's only the co-wife of someone who did a lav. And even though we have this kalvachayma, the kalvachayma is only limited to the Hirsch, that the Leah who committed the sin shouldn't be living with the Reuven, and therefore the brothers can't step in. But what does that have to do with the Tzara? So, what about her? She herself? Sorry, the kalvachayma is not strong enough to push away the Tzara. My question is, she herself, she cannot live with the Reuven. Okay, what about the brothers? Me alam kalvachayim mitzvah. The kalvachayim is not so simple, because on the true, Reuven has no mitzvah to live with, living in sin with her when he took her back. But the brothers have a mitzvah of yibum. Do we say? But the kalvachayim says, look, you're stepping into Reuven's shoes, and if Reuven can't live with her, how can you step in his shoes and live with her? So therefore, you can't. Maybe not. Maybe the mitzvah overrides that. Since they have a mitzvah of Yibam, the brother never had a mitzvah of living with her. The brother mitzvah of Yibam, that mitzvah of Yibam overturns the kalvachayim. So maybe even the original woman can marry one of the brothers, do Yibam. Amalei, he told him to Nesu, that we just quickly go through the same more again. To Nesu, didn't we just learn if one woman was kosher, one woman was possible, we just learned before. And im haisa chalitz, and we said you have an option. If you do the chalitza, do it to the woman that's possible. And im hoya miyabim, and if you want to be miyabim to the kosher. So here with Rabbi Yechim, we had two versions of the question. One version of the question was about the tzara, and one version, the second version of the question was about the woman herself. The woman herself, whether she can marry the brothers. So now we're going to use the same price we had a minute ago. So just quickly go through it. Just have the same thing. So the Gemara says over here, if you can do chalitza, do the psula. If you do yibum, do the kosher. Now, what does it mean, kshed psula? She can marry a kohen. Psula is a woman divorced. She cannot marry a kohen. Now, this guy is a Yisrael, Shimon is a Yisrael. So therefore, he can marry either one. What does he care about a kohen? Even the day Chazi, man of minutes, since he can marry either one, so what he suggested he should marry the kosher, what does that even mean? It must be that someone that's kosher to him and puzzle to him, and therefore when it comes to marry the one's kosher. When it comes to chalitza, better give the chalitza to the puzzle. What's when he puzzle to him? That's only to him puzzle. Machzir Gerushasa, for example, the case of Machzir Gerushasa. Now what? It can't be talking about, let's say, his daughter, because then the tzara has there's no yibum, nothing else. So let's say somebody like Machzir Gerushasa, Reuben took back his original wife after she divorced. She was divorced and married somebody else. Uktani, and says as follows: if you want to do yibum, if you want to do yibum, you can go ahead and do yibum. To which one should you do yibum? The ksheda. Do yibum the ksheda. So what is even here? That the yibum is to the tzara. So on the one hand, it says the ksheda. Which of these two women is ksheda? Not the one that Reuven took back. It's the other wife, the tzara. So we have to answer both questions. As far as the ksheda, as far as the woman herself is concerned, you shouldn't take her. She's psula. As far as the tzara is concerned, she's still involved in the yibum, and you can marry her. So the answer is both questions, both versions of the question. So the and therefore resolving questions. So Gemara will answer the same thing we said before. No, who told you we're talking about a case of machzir gerushasa and so on? We mean someone is puzzled to a coin anyway, and kshay means kosher to a coin. And as far as Yevamos is concerned, she can actually marry either one she wants. He can marry either one he wants. But we're not talking about machzir gerushasa. So what do you mean by chalitza? You should have to give some sula. What do you care? Or he can give chalitza to either one. What's the difference to which one he gives chalitza to? It's because Rabbi Yosef said, Rabbi Yosef, you are throwing out your water. You don't need it anymore, your dirty water. But there might be somebody who wants it. Why throw it out? Give it to that person who wants it. Same thing here. You don't want both of these women. Why ruin the ksheda that she can no longer marry a kain? You shouldn't pour out the water of your pit. And others need it. Just quickly, just two more lines. Toshma Hamachzir Gerushasa. Somebody takes back his divorced wife, but she says once she got married, he vitzarasa chalitza. Same we just had before. She and her tzara gets chalitza. So before we go further, he vitzarasa, both of them. Either one. So therefore, but it says clearly that the tzara gets chalitza. Tzara cannot marry, and it also says that she, the original wife, also. Sorry, but the tzara cannot get married. That was our question, and then they both get chalitza. That resolves the question we had before. Says the Gemara, no. The lav tirutzik, you're already editing the brayso. Continue editing it, and this is how you should learn. He chayletzes, the original, the one within the sin can only do chalitza. But tzarasa, oy chayletzes, oy misyabem. She can do either one. Okay, we'll start tomorrow, half an hour after Shabbos.